when you don't have teeth, I suppose that's it. Oh, well, I'm not getting into this anymore. That's the end. I've taken it too far, as I always do. Hello and welcome to the Quackcast. This is the Drunkduck Quackcast. I'm Ozone Ocean, and with me are my fellow adult children, Baines, Pitt, and Taunt Serene. We're all ready to go.
Hi.
Hello.
This week,
Hello.
we're talking about the trope of the man-child and also the new trope of the woman-child. I say new trope because it's slowly getting more traction in pop culture, which is good. I suppose they've both always been around, but there's been an extreme dominance of the man-child in pop culture generally, and a lot of people, I think, have refused to believe that the woman child can exist. I think that has been a thing, because women are automatically seen. What's that, Baines?
Yeah. It probably goes back and forth. I think that maybe decades ago in movies, the immature woman was a more common trope. You know?
It was, but it was more seen as an ingenue rather than being an immature woman. So it was more seen as, oh, you're slightly virginal, or you're impressionable. Let me show you the ways of the world. I think that's how it was often portrayed in the old days, which was
I think that still counts, though. It's just a different way that people express it through different genders.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it was more an external kind of view of it. So it was like, oh, let's see, this is how I see a woman, rather than as a woman would see herself, pretty much. If you know what I mean. Like, it's always the because back in the day there were a lot more male writers. They made up the majority of writing teams, and they didn't really give people their own kind of real voice. It was more like, let me tell you how the woman is. I'm the man. I can tell you everything. I know everything about, like I'm doing now. Exactly. The irony is not lost on me. Which I think that's part of the issue, that it was never from the person's own perspective. So now you see, say, Melissa McCarthy in her roles being a woman child, or Rebel Wilson, and that's more of oh, it's actually not a real person, but this is actually a more of a realized person rather than an external point of view of this person. This is more how a person would see themselves. I'm not sure if I'm really explaining it right, but when you see a man-child, it's more of their own view of the world, pretty much. This is how they see themselves. This is how they see the world. It's conforming to their wants. And when you get a woman-child now in films, that's the same kind of thing. This is their view of the world. This is it conforming to them. Whereas in the past, for the female characters at least, it was more like, this is how the world acts upon them. So, and this is how other people see them, if that makes any sense.
Mm.
Well, this is a long explanation. What?
I said maybe. I'm not sure. I'm not totally sure about that. But
all right. Well, let's belay that for the moment, and I'll introduce the featured comic. Quai can tell us about the featured comic, which is The Waves Inside. So tell us, Quai, about The Waves Inside.
Hello, this is Quackcast, and the feature I've selected for this week is The Waves Inside by The Jagged, and it is rated M for mature. Corallium nelumbo, dubbed as the lotus coral, was discovered in a deep trench in the far Pacific. Hear and discover a jumble of jellyfish tales that provide immunity for the injured after surviving multiple jellyfish stings. What do you want from me? A voice cries out from the bottom of the ocean. A quiet contemplation of stars. Stars, a myriad of stars that may or may not be as real as you and me. Unravel the mystery of the lotus coral and read The Waves Inside by The Jagged, rated M.
And that was Quackcast telling us about The Waves Inside. Okay, so next up is our featured comic, our featured music. Gumwallis has given us a theme to a comic called B-Side, which is Zeitgeist B-Side, I suppose. There's a comic called B-Side, but it is like a spin-off from a comic called Zeitgeist. Weirdness. Anyway, so this music is dizzy, dreamy, acoustic guitar throwing moods and colour. This takes us from a minimal white apartment to the twilight shadows of the evening in a forested wood. Night surrounds and pervades. So, Gumwall, let's take it away with the Zeitgeist B-Side. That was the music, Zeitgeist B-Side. B-Side Zeitgeist, this is a comic by a person called Itsuki, and it's rated M. So thanks very much.
Mitsuki, I love her.
Oh, really? Okay. So
I don't know. I don't.
You're pretending you know this creator.
I made. You don't know who Mitsuki is. Okay, never mind. I made a stupid joke that wasn't a good. She's a musician.
Oh, okay. Oh, what kind of music?
Well, like newer stuff. It's like she's always searching for love or dealing with a shitty man, but her music's really good. I like it.
Adult contemporary music. See, even more like Pitface is the adult of the bunch here. That sounds good.
One good movie kiss and she'll be all right.
Oh, of course. That'll heal her. Yeah, make her into a fully functioning adult. You know, that was one of the most disappointing things about Step Brothers, which is the poster child for the man-child idea. So you have these John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell both living with their parents who are both divorced, and then their parents get together in a relationship, so these two become stepbrothers. And they're both like, you know, man children, expect their parents to do absolutely everything for them. They don't even work, you know, they just they get their parents to cook them dinner and all that kind of stuff. And they're fully supported, and they're very immature, and they have no responsibilities. And then they're thrown together, and they're both used to being, the dominant presence in the house, and so they have a bit of a pissing contest, and they fight for dominance. But then they become best of friends, and their childishness gets redoubled upon itself. But in their journey to redemption, they find responsibility, and they find adulthood, which is a bit disappointing. They were quite toxic people, being toxic influences on their parents and everything like that. But they were quite funny in themselves, and they were real characters. And it was slightly disappointing to see them defanged that way, and turned into boring, like, adult contributors to society. It sort of took away that joy and that exuberance of the everything that makes the man-child such an entertaining entity. At least that's how I see it, anyway.
Yeah, I don't remember the ending super well, but I know they had their own business or something at the end. But I mean, that movie was an extreme, like a parody. Like, didn't they have to share a bedroom when the parents moved in together?
They did.
Or when they got married?
Yes.
When they're like 45 or whatever.
Yeah.
It's very fun.
It's an absolute super.
Or they're like, "Stay out of my room! Don't touch my dog!" It's like, it was so funny because they're so funny.
Yeah, I mean, that is like, it's taking the man-child to an extreme, as you say, by making the people not behave like a man-child, but behave like literal 14-year-olds, and do everything that a 14-year-old do. Well, like a 10-year-old, really. Like,
yeah, more like a 10-year-old.
Yeah, like in their pajamas, watching cartoons in the morning and eating cereal in front of the TV. Pretty much that kind of thing.
Sounds pretty good.
Yeah, sign me up, man.
So yeah, but yeah, an extreme kind of version of it, and making the comedy comes out of the deliberate contrast of a 45-year-old, as you say, Baines, acting like a 10-year-old, which people don't typically do. If someone did that, then they would usually be in care, because there was some kind of developmental issue, But and it wouldn't be funny at all. We wouldn't be laughing at that. We would be, taking care of this person and making sure that they weren't disturbed and had a good life. It wouldn't be something that we were laughing at. What's that?
Yeah, they were the whole package too. They weren't just like these carefree man-child types. They were maybe, like you said, more true man-children. They were angry sometimes, like selfish, like you were saying, and like really sometimes, like if they didn't get their way, very angry. So
oh yeah,
like actually childish, actual man-children. I guess when people say it in real life, that's kind of what they're talking about. It's that whole package. It's not the fun version.
So, but it has been fodder for sitcoms for a long time, and a lot of comedy films. I mean, not all comedy films, but it's been pretty popular. All the people surrounding Adam Sandler, Kevin James, Rob Schneider, whoever else surrounds him, they usually play man-children kind of characters in whatever they do, and that's just their thing.
Well, it's an easy way to do a certain kind of comedy, right? And you can see why. Chris Farley too, of course, like Tommy Boy. He's a lovable guy and everything, but very much a man-child.
Even who was his comedy partner?
David Spade.
David Spade. Even David Spade had a variation on the man-child character. To a degree. I mean, not say in Tommy Boy
Well,
or Black Sheep. I can't remember. He was in all those bloody films. They all blend into one.
Yeah.
But say in Just Shoot Me and comedy projects that he had done in the 90s. It was, he would be.
Yeah, I haven't seen a lot of his stuff actually, but I know who he is, of course.
Yeah, you got his name. I didn't. Little David Spade, great character, but I think Chris Farley was actually a real man-child. So.
I think so. Like it, yeah. It's funny how the documentary about him, like, they literally just use clips from Tommy Boy as they're telling Chris Farley's life story, and it fits perfectly.
Yeah, he was a bit of a toxic man-child. That's what probably led to him, dying. Maybe, I'm not sure. He was he like the whole like adult child thing is someone who divorces themselves from a lot of adult responsibilities, and that includes like personal responsibility. And that can have quite negative consequences, really. Like not being able to, keep a job or relationships, which can be very funny, but can also be quite tragic in real life. And like over-reliance on things that make people happy, in his case, addictive things. I don't know. So it was, that was his story. Let's not bring it down, though.
Sad, yeah.
But yeah, one of the things, like Baines, you made a point of was, so the man-child is often depicted as being someone who is quite fond of like nerdy things, like comics and that kind of stuff. But I made this counterpoint that one of the original depictions of the man-child was someone who was into sports, and that was the characteristic man-child. So
it makes sense.
Yeah. The over, enthusiastic person who is just, like, centering their whole life and all their hobbies around that one thing.
Like a Goku.
Goku's a man-child.
He is a man-child.
Yeah, but he's a man-child because he's so naive, isn't he? Like, he is, like...
So, doesn't mean he's not a man-child.
Yeah, I mean, but that is his version of a man-child, being a very naive person.
Got you. I'm sorry. I thought you were saying it as if it was an exceptional.
No, he definitely is. A lot of the characters are. Like, Master Roshi is a man-child in a different way. Like, he's an extreme pervert, but his whole life revolves around, like, oh, booby, 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 but he hasn't grown up past that kind of aspect. So, Master Roshi is one of my favorite man-children.
Man-children in anime, they're a bit pervasive the more that I think about it. Sailor Moon, I mean, like, although she technically, like, she's a young teenager, but, at least in the earlier parts of the series, she's a crybaby, like, that's a big part of her character, and it's about her kind of growing up a little bit past that and getting the confidence and all that yada yada yada. But yeah, when you mentioned man-children, the first thing I thought of was the movie Burial Ground. That's neither here nor there. And then the second thing was Sailor Moon, because that's a big part of her character is that she's like a crybaby, and she is a young character, but judging by the other characters around her and stuff, she's expected to act older than that and take more responsibility, which she learns more and more as the series goes on.
Yeah, definitely that kind of character. That's a good point. And it's not done that much in anime for the female characters, but probably more these days. Maria Holic is the only character that really comes to my mind who is very much like, but there are a lot of them like that. Maria Holic is a lesbian who got her wish and is finally going to a girls' school where she can spy on all the other girls and be a perv, but she can never really like seal the deal because she gets like incredible nosebleeds whenever she gets turned on, and she ends up staying with like her dorm mate is the most popular girl in school, who's the queen, and everyone follows what she wants. But it turns out that it's actually a cross-dressing boy who she's stuck with, who she was initially attracted to, but is absolutely not attracted to because he's a lesbian. I mean, no, because he's a cross-dresser and she's a lesbian. Yeah, so it's got a really hilarious dynamic, but she is so immature and so perverted that it's incredibly funny because you don't normally see female characters who are perverted. They're always like being the victims of perverts. Which it's good to see that from the other side. It's fun. I would recommend Maria Holic to anybody. Although if you don't like
Is it an anime?
What's that?
Just a manga? Is it an anime or just a manga?
I think it's both.
Okay.
It's a very funny anime. Very funny. The poor girl, whenever she gets like extremely turned on, she bleeds out pretty much. And then she gets woken up to next day.
I do love seeing when chicks in anime get nosebleeds. I feel it in my soul. I'm like, I'm finally being seen.
But yeah, well, so the female women children are, like I was saying before, they are coming to their own now in movies more and more. Like Melissa McCarthy often plays this character, and who's that? Kirsten Wiig as well. She often plays that kind of character, like in many films, like I think Bridesmaids. I'm not sure. There's something about Bridesmaids that she was in. Welcome to Me, which was a very serious film where she's a woman child. Lots of these kind of things, and it's good to see that because we're not kind of focusing on, oh, this is manhole, this is just how they are, boys will be boys. Now we're getting to see, no, this is every adult, because every adult actually is a child. There's no such thing as really an adult in that, your brain doesn't change. You're still the same child you were when you were a little kid. You just have to have adult responsibilities because you have to look after yourself and you have to look after all these other things that come around, and it's easier to do that if you're a bit more mature in your outlook. But we're all the same children we were when we were little kids. We still have our little nerdy passions for things, and it's good to see characters who are allowed to express themselves in those ways. Maybe that's part of the appeal of the adult child, because they're allowed to express themselves in their childish joy, and they're allowed to divest themselves of responsibility. And wouldn't we all love to do that? Responsibility is hard.
When they're not portrayed as broken or underdeveloped people that need to be changed,
Yeah, that's the thing, that they are not actually allowed to express themselves if they are portrayed in that way, because this expression is portrayed as something at best deviant and at worst completely dysfunctional. So they are not really allowed. They are being just framed as, okay, look, this is the broken person in the cast. So and I think that's like, there are certain things in the cliches, and I was away for a bit because I had to chase after dogs and a ghost doorbell for some reason. Anyway, so I didn't catch if you covered that, but there are certain elements in the stereotype of the man-child or the woman-child that I think are more remnants of a previous economy, so to speak, because, like, okay, they live with their mom, and that is considered problematic, but that would correspond more to an economy where buying your own house is feasible on an average job. Like holding down an average job can eventually earn you the capacity to move out in whatever context. In this economy, this is not as doable. So perhaps a person in the 50s or 60s, and I don't really know, but perhaps a person in these decades living with their mother would indicate that they do not want to, quote unquote, emancipate themselves. But the person living with their mother or father or whatever, the families living together now probably means that money is tight more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean that aspect is an outdated trope. Sorry, Ben's gone.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's part of an outdated aspect of the trope because the factors that can't list, and also it's a very like not only like 50s, it was also a particularly American kind of thing, because
that's another thing.
a lot of other cultures they don't have that kind of split from the family as being
stigma.
Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like again, I would think of that as more of it depends on context. Like a lot of man-child, woman-child characters I think of don't live with their parents, and like that is not necessarily something that indicates a certain character type. It's like it's more about how do you live with your parents.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, kind of like how they package that character, how they portray that character in that kind of context. Like, for instance, another man-child I can think of is Steven's dad in Steven's universe, Greg.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, he doesn't live with his parents or anything like that. He lives out of a van. He's kind of a washed-up rock star that never made it, but they don't portray that in a poor light. He's still a good father. They don't portray it as something that needs to be fixed. That's just who he is, and I like that a lot. He literally lives in a van down by the river. I mean, we were talking about Chris Farley, so hopefully he doesn't have the same stigmas as that, but
yeah.
He's beautiful, yeah.
And a lot of them were quite affluent. Like a lot of these characters, definitely in I would say the 80s and stuff like that. Like these characters had money.
Yeah.
They could afford to be kind of childish, irresponsible.
So that's a positive aspect. I mean, they can be. What is that noise?
There's some noise. I don't know what's going on. Oh.
I think Baines is starting up his old floppy disk drive.
Sorry, buddy.
I don't know.
I don't know what it was, but yeah, sorry.
I was thinking there's the Japanese thing that is quite negative. It's the NEET or the hikikomori, which is the weird kind of social phenomena of these people who never went into the working like they never got jobs, they never got hired, so they basically stayed home. They make money doing like weird internet odd jobs. Maybe they don't even make money. Their parents totally support them, and they often don't even leave their rooms. They just watch anime and have manga, and like this is a real thing. They have like rooms full of like little manga figurines and manga magazines and anime discs and all this kind of stuff. And there's been a lot of different animes and things based on these people and their place in society. So that's a weird version of the man-child.
Yeah. The first thing I think of, and I mean, I am an absolute outsider and I don't know much about this at all, but speaking from that perspective, from what I understand of Japanese like society, it can be pretty high stress. And so I kind of am not surprised that, there are people who, need to escape and find that it's better just never to partake in that, because I see that here to an extent as well. I mean, not only can we, as millennials, not to get political, but it's true. Not only can we typically not afford housing because the cost of living is so different from what people are actually earning, but it's just, I don't know, if you have to hold down 3 different jobs working 60 hours a week, it starts to feel like it's not worth it. Like, to what end? So I feel like I understand that a bit.
Oh yeah,
That's a
definitely.
really good point by both you and Tans, actually, about how the economy and the time, like in a certain decade or certain decades, this trope or certain versions of this trope would make more sense than it might now. Kind of a different
Yeah.
world.
Well, apparently the hikikomori, or the NEETs, they came out of back in the 90s. There was a global recession, really harsh, so harsh that well, in Japanese society, what happens is every year, people graduate from high school, they go into university, and then they basically walk into various jobs. It's a hiring round, and people get hired, and they get a job for life. But back then, the recession was so harsh, and the Japanese economy just collapsed because it was so strong, and then it just absolutely tanked. So these businesses, in order to stay afloat, they put a hiring freeze. So they just said, look, we're not hiring anybody. So they were hiring very few people. They weren't doing the normal kind of rounds of stuff. So people would go to university or graduate from high school, and there'd be no jobs for them. And so that was a unique situation. So these people never went into full-time employment. And that's really what became the genesis of this whole, neat hikikomori culture, people staying away and not, partaking in normal society and getting, normal responsibilities. So that came from the Generation X in their particular in the world. So yeah, and they've still got that issue now. They've actually having government funded programs in order to try and change that and try and get these people back into society in some way, because they're in their 40s and 50s now, and it's become a genuine issue. So maybe something similar will happen with the poor old millennial generation that are having a similar kind of issue now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And if it doesn't change, the Zoomers will face it as well, and it's just going to continue.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Exactly. The global financial crisis hit, and that messed up everyone in the 2000s. So yeah, this stuff is quite cyclical. But sorry, Tance, you were saying was hit in the West in 2008 and got in Asia in the 90s. What was
I
that?
said what hit the global recession.
Oh yeah.
First got a trial run in Asia, which is around the era that you were talking about. At least as far as I know, I'm not really super savvy in those things, but I do know that there was IMF level interventions in countries like Korea and all around the area. And so probably Japan got hit as well. So
To the extreme, yeah.
yeah, I think.
I'll go on,
Yeah.
Pit.
No, I was just agreeing.
Oh
that,
yeah.
Yeah, they.
Yeah, Japan back then was slated to be taking over as the next powerhouse economy, taking over from the United States. That was basically just going to happen. We just knew Japan was going to be taking over the world as the powerhouse. And when when the recession hit, that ended that thing totally, and Japan never recovered. They never, like, the position China is now, that was where Japan was.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah. So there are certain things. I mean, honestly, as I was listening to all the examples of characters that are man children, women children, I realized that it's a character I loathe, like as a trope. It really like gets under my skin, and I sort of get the heebie-jeebies when I'm exposed to this character. And the reason for that is not that, I mean, immature characters are part and parcel of the human condition in reality and in fiction. But the man child and woman child is especially shallow in the sense that they tend to be super tropey in the way they act. And it feels like I'm looking at a person through the lens of a very affluent, disjointed with the reality white guy that is taking pot shots at someone else that they don't really understand. So if you get what I mean, it feels a little bit like this. So I'm watching a caricature of sorts as a character, I mean, not in real life. I'm talking about the character.
Yeah, but some of them can definitely come off that way, done very poorly. I think especially like in like the big bag examples and stuff that Oz was talking about. But like say for instance in like Seinfeld, they're all well to do. You don't feel so much like it's that. They're just people with bad personalities. Because of that's who they are, they're so yeah, but I definitely agree that a lot of times it also comes off as very just gross, toxic.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was looking for as an adjective. Like it feels a little bit gross.
Yeah, a bit
Usually,
classist and stuff.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
Well, it varies. There's negative portrayals and positive portrayals and neutral.
Yeah.
Like, say, Romy and Michelle's high school reunion is one of my favorite films that has two women children, and it's a positive portrayal because it's them just reliving their high school days and doing it right this time, basically, because they go back for a high school reunion, and they're both like total children, and it's cool. So there can be positive. Baines, you were saying like it's a negative thing, or like I think it can be either. I think it can be positive or negative. Or neutral.
I think it is a matter of connotation a lot. Like you have for the same is, I guess, thing. So you have childish and childlike. One is negative, one is positive. So a childish, whatever is childish, is not good. Like tends to just imply that something is problematic in some way. Something that is childlike retains the good aspects of the child, like being pure, being innocent, being happy with simple things, or what have you, but not the problems of being a child, like immature, impulsive, blah blah blah. So I think it really comes down to this dichotomy. If you have a man-child, the chances are the child comes from childish and not from childlike. Whereas if you have someone that is, I don't know, actually, I'm trying to think of a term that would be more positive, and I cannot think of one. Do not
Innocent.
exist.
Yeah, naive, innocent kind of.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Innocent.
I'd say a character like the dude from The Big Lebowski. I think he was an example that maybe Andreas Helixfinger gave on Your New Postbones. I'm not sure, but he's someone that you could look at in different ways. You could see him as being childish, and his way of life as being quite negative, or you can look at it and see, oh, he's has a simple perspective and he's very zen, and you can see it as positive. So it just depends on the way that you look at it as how you see it, rather than there just being one way to look at his behavior and his way of life. If you've seen that film, I don't know.
I haven't, but I agree with your estimation.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, especially since, like, you know, he gets caught up with all of this external stuff quite for reasons out of his control. But he's very much at the mercy of things happening around him.
Yeah, like life happens to him, but as a man, he doesn't have much responsibility.
Whatever. Yes, I think so.
He doesn't even wear shoes. Like, he just wears sandals all the time and a hoodie and shorts, and you know, he has his stupid regular friends and goes bowling and that kind of stuff. But his life is devoid of adult responsibility and the normal, you know, pressures and cares that an adult would normally have. He doesn't, and that's because be seen as very positive in that, oh, he's zen. This man has divested himself of the worries and cares that people normally have, and he's living and he's abiding.
Well, I think it's interesting with that.
Oh, go on, Thomas. I mean, Pitt. Sorry.
Yeah. No, Deej. Yeah. So interesting, a bit of responsibility between. Oh, I forget their names. There was the guy that John Goodman played, and then, but anyway, he kind of keeps things in control. Like you have the impression that if he was not there, their lives would be significantly more out of control. When he's in that specific context with his friends, he's the reasonable one. He's the rational one. But when you see him in the real world, otherwise, yeah, he's just kind of, like you said, like very chill, very zen, things just kind of happen to him, and he does his best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But surprisingly, it's actually a very realistic take on that aspect of the world. You know, I've known so many people who are exactly like the dude and have lifestyles. So many people who live exactly that way, of all those characters except for the John Goodman character. But he's very much an American character, that one. But all the rest are very, very universal. Is he an American character, or is he just a total like caricature of a mad gun nut?
What his character is he's a caricature, but he's a caricature of a Vietnam vet that has pretty bad PTSD.
Right. Okay. So it does have an analog. That's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, watch it again, and I think you'll see that there are some references to it, definitely.
Oh, I love the film. It's so hilarious and funny.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. Yeah, one of my faves.
So there we have a more neutral depiction of the man-child. Because he can be seen as negative, or he can be positive. It just depends on your own point of view and what you bring to that portrayal. Especially, I think, like the real Big Lebowski from the movie. I think him and his cadre of people that he's with, he sees the dude as being negative. He sees him as being pathetic and useless. And
Yeah.
so in universe, yeah. Whereas the other characters, I don't know, they don't really have an opinion either way on him. They just like him because he's their friend. So
Yeah.
but that's interesting. Maybe some of them see
Yeah,
him
and
as
the
being
rich guy
horrible. Oh, go on, sorry.
isn't somebody you're supposed to. The rich guy isn't somebody you're supposed to like sympathize with or anything like that either. So it's very much like a wrong take. Not that you have a wrong take on that, but that his view of the dude is not one you're supposed to really agree with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because he's a villain.
Yeah.
Sort of. Yeah.
No, he is. I think that's safe to say he is.
I think so, yeah. Antagonist. Yeah.
The Big Lebowski and the Big Lebowski.
You got the wrong Lebowski.
Let me explain something to you. I'm not Mr. Lebowski. You're Mr. Lebowski. I'm the dude.
He really wants that rug back, though. I mean,
He does.
just give me my rug.
Tied the room together, man.
He's definitely not supposed to be seen as negative in a negative light. Like everyone around him, the rich people he deals with, all those other characters, and well, the other villains, the nihilists, and everyone, like they're they're not. They're insane. They're troublesome. So the dude is kind of
Yeah.
You're on his side, I think.
The dude. Well, so I was just thinking though. I mean, normally, like we're saying, like it's usually a pejorative, usually a negative, and say, like in so many of these films where you have a man-child or woman-child or whatever, like the end goal is adult responsibility. Is trying to reach that somehow. And it's hard to find examples of where that doesn't happen, but it's so easy to find examples of where it does. Where they get the goal of they get the girlfriend, and that suddenly makes everything more mature and that fixes them. But
that reminds me, old movie, Tom Hanks in Big.
Yeah.
He plays this boy who gets a wish to be an adult, but he's not an adult. He's just the same kid in an adult body. And the whole thing is that he, being a kid, is a lot more, is a lot better at coming up with ideas for toys than adults, because he is a kid and he just says what he would like to play with. So that gets him through a series of events and coincidences and stuff. It gets him a position as a top tier executive in this toy company. And I don't remember it. I haven't seen it for a long, long time. But that's the main gist. And he is basically the man child. He's a man child. So he has now money that are for adult, like money that is adult level, and he gets this condo and he fills it with, I don't know, arcade games and trampolines and
a bunk bed to sleep on.
Super kiddie stuff. But there is this one turning point where he either gets a kiss or he even makes love, which is very freaky.
Yeah.
Considered, to the female lead. And the way that we know is that he gets coffee and he becomes more adult just because he got in bed.
Right.
And he's like, and the ramifications of that are really creepy. But it was this stereotype that if you get laid, you become adult, and you
Yeah.
suddenly now have the capacity to be responsible and be serious and discard all the child stuff,
Which is so stupid, really. But
super
yeah.
stupid.
And like you say, when you initially watch that as a kid, like it's all fine. It's whatever. It's like it's fantasy. But as an adult, you watch that and you come to the oh my god, that child in a man's body has had sex, and you just go, oh, okay, I'm just gonna like pretend that didn't exist because that's just too
Exactly.
creepy.
Exactly, and it's like, why? What were you thinking? Whoever thought that up, what were you thinking, you girl, whatever, whoever
But
you
this
were?
this is an old trope and an old belief. It's that, and
Uh,
people will cite it. They'll go, yeah, I was really into this kind of thing, and then I discovered girls, and then I wasn't into childish stuff anymore. And you think, you fucking idiot, you're still a naive, stupid, childish person. It doesn't matter if you stop being interested in Transformers or I don't know, like your
Yeah.
childhood sports. It doesn't
it's
make
a
you more
little bit
adult.
like a homeopathy in the sense that, oh, I got interested in girls and then I grew out of, I don't know, Care Bears or whatever it was. So and the thing is that it's a natural progression. You grow out of things, you grow into things, and one is not causationally related to the other.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't equal maturity. I mean, maybe physical maturity, puberty, so to speak, but it doesn't
yeah.
mean you're more mature. Yeah.
Yeah, mentally.
I do think the man-child as a trope, a lot of time it is prepubescent interests. So, like someone who's obsessed with sex could be immature, but I mean, at least for me, that's not what I think of when I think of a man-child or a woman-child.
It's
It's like
it's used as a way of
stuff you could.
characterizing it. Go on, sorry, Baines.
Yeah, it really
Yeah.
it really reminds me of this general trend. And when I say trend, I mean in parenting and stuff like that. After a particular age, like around 12, 13, 14, around there, parents cracked down on kids' hobbies in the sense that you shouldn't be reading comics anymore, or you shouldn't be playing with this anymore. And if you did, there was vast disapproval from parents. At least I really witnessed that a lot as a teacher. Like I had kids that had to sneak comics at school because they were basically contraband at home. And I think that is also that plays into this whole stereotype trope.
Oh yeah.
This
Sure.
preconception, like, okay, now you have to give up the kid stuff. Now you're a big boy or you're a big girl now.
Yeah, it's as old as time. You read ancient things, and there's always this particular trope of children not being able to, you like a really really ancient idea is like, oh, you're an adult boy now, like he's 12 or 13. You're not allowed to play with the girls anymore or the women. You must now come along with the men and go hunting and stuff like that because you've reached maturity and you're a man now. And so that's and that's a tribal society thing as well. They had often that was a thing that happened. And yeah, they mix up the mental side with the physical maturity side. Like the thing is, like as adults, like there is no such thing as a real adult. I mean, our brains do change, but we're still the same kids as we were when we were little kids. And that's like every time I see like the roughest, meanest looking guy, I just think, yeah, that's just your external appearance. You're still like the same little kid inside.
Yeah.
Like doesn't matter how many
insecurities and
yeah. And the thing is that what is growing out of certain things? it's not a sign necessarily of maturity in the sense of, oh, okay, this is I'm too like too much of a wise person for this particular IP or whatever. A lot of issue comes in the way something is written. So it's not the subject matter per se, it's the way it is presented and how it is portrayed. So when you are a kid, you're looking for very specific things to conceptualize a plot and the character and stuff like that. As you grow up, you want more information. If that information isn't present, it will not hold your interest, and that's all there is to it. If it was present, it would, or if you could sort of, if it intrigued your imagination enough so that you supplemented it, then it keeps holding your interest, and then you don't grow out of it. If that makes sense.
Exactly. Game of Thrones is a great example. Once upon a time, fantasy was only like a thing marketed towards younger audiences, and that is a fantasy that's definitely not marketed towards younger audiences, but it's still a fantasy. With all the fantasy things, sword fights and horses and dragons and things like that, but it's for adults. So exactly as you say, Tance.
Yeah, exactly. And the things like stories that I really like are stories that have a bit of everything for everyone, in the sense that the kid can enjoy it, and then when they grow up a little more and they are like a preteen, they can enjoy it again and see new things in the same story that they read like a couple of 3 years, 4 years ago. And then when they read it again as a teen, they see more things, and so on and so forth. And it keeps morphing because you keep seeing new things. And I had a couple of books that did this for me, and they are unfairly classified as teen literature, and it's not, in my opinion. I think it is very solid, super mature, super adult literature. It's just that it's given in a way that everyone can enjoy it and get different things from it when reading it.
Asterix is a good example of that.
Yeah.
I loved that when I was a really little kid. That was my favorite comic as a little kid. I just devoured it. But as an adult, you can read it and get even more stuff out of it. It's incredible.
Yeah. I'll give a very brief example. If you ever catch any of her books, please don't let them go, like buy them or read them or whatever. The author is Alki Zey. She's Greek, but she has had her books translated in a gazillion languages. So what she does is that she crafts a story that appeals to a kid because it has adventure in it. But the story is woven in such a way that it is super political, it is super socially oriented, like it has a lot of social commentary. It is a product of specific eras, and it also has a lot of interpersonal relationship things. So, depending on how old you are when you read it, it's a completely different book. I remember reading one, it's called Next to the Rail Tracks. And when I read it as a kid, I said, oh my God, what a fun story. I love it. I really enjoyed it and everything. And then when I read it as an adult, for a different, like I wanted to do it for something else. I read it for something else. I was like, it was a very somber story. It was not that fun as I remembered it. But I was looking for different things then. So yeah, I love that. I love this sort of stories.
That's something special. No books are coming to mind that I loved as a kid and then loved in a different way as an adult. I'm sure there are some. But I mean, I could definitely think of comics and maybe an example, like some of the really good Pixar movies that are really appealing for kids, and then you watch them as an adult. And if it's a really good story, it's like, oh my gosh, like you see deeper truths in it about life or something.
Oh, definitely Pixar films. Yes, they're multi-layered, very well done in that regard. The more multi-layered, those are the ones about it. You know, like Soul, Wall-E, the ones where they're not trying to just be childish, like I don't know, the Red or something like that.
I haven't seen Soul yet. It looks great.
Well, Soul is fantastic, but say Turning Red is good, but it's focused on preteen experience of life. It's just about preteens and how preteens think, so it's limited. But Soul is fantastic. That is that goes into all aspects of, you know, the adult experience, but also the adult as a child and the childish innocent spirit and stuff like that. It's really, really clever.
I just watched Up again, and I didn't see that. I was an adult the first time I saw it, but a young adult probably, or a younger adult. But that, even that, see, like kids would like it on one level with the adventure and just the fact that it is a cartoon and everything, and the sort of fun animals and all that kind of stuff. And then you watch it as an adult, and it's like, wow, this is heavy. It's about growing old and death and all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh.
Well, yeah.
Unfulfilled dreams as well, a lot.
But in Up,
Which one?
Tant says unfulfilled things. But say in Up, it's this old guy, and you look externally at him, he's an old grumpy guy, but then you see, oh, actually, he was like a happy kid, and he had this happy, you know, like young man relationship with this woman, and he's, instead of like him falling into old age, he's going, hang on, bugger that, I'm not like, you know, going along with society wants me to do, I'm just going to do what I want and just be a child. So he gets all his balloons and flies off to his own magical land that he wanted to see with his wife, and, you know, just like embraces like his childish wants, his young man wants, which is, you know, a great thing. And that the child who he gets stuck with forces him to, you know, out of his grumpy mode, and forces him to embrace that, you know, childishness and embrace of life, and not to give up, which is a good thing. So it's all those aspects, which is what I
and the discoveries he makes later in the movie, I won't spoil, about his wife, maybe in the way she saw things, and the unfulfilled dreams. Like it's pretty deep stuff, and it's very much an adult kind of insights that, I mean, you just couldn't relate to that as a kid, but it's all in there for you as an adult to understand.
It's beautiful.
Now that you mention it, considering that they are shown to keep trying to save for this one adventure, that trip that they want to go on, they could be considered like a man-child and a man and a woman-child, in the sense that they are trying to make this childhood dream happen, this adventure that they have agreed on making true as kids. So maybe that is also an aspect.
I mean, they're definitely not. They're child. What was your distinction? Childlike and childish. Childish is the bad one. They were childlike with their sort of, you know, embracing life and happiness and curiosity and all that stuff, and you know, just things that didn't come true for them. So, it's a beautiful movie.
It is, like many Pixar ones. But I think if we can take anything away from this whole idea, you know, it is a media pop culture trope, really. But if we can take anything away from it, is that everybody is a child in reality, no matter how old you are. Like, you know, 90-year-old man 9-year-old woman, there's still like, you know, that same child is alive inside them that, you know, didn't. The external appearance doesn't reflect their inner reality, really, or their inner mental reality. So we should always realize that, you know, when you see someone who's really old, they're not like this some decrepit, wise kind of alien creature from 100 years ago. There's still that, you know, that fun-loving, childish person is there, just as present, really. And that should help you, instead of like, you know, this whole media idea of like looking at the man-child or the woman-child as being a negative thing. We should really embrace it as a positive thing, in that this unites us because we are all that child, and we can all connect on that level, really, which is a positive thing. It helps us understand people better, not looking at people just as they're the way they choose to make themselves appear, or just the way they do appear, that, you know, separates us from other people, because we look, oh, this person is very rough, this person is very old, this person is, you know, very like scary, whatever. No, we're all that naive child inside, all of us. Anyway, so that's my point of view on it. The universality of the child.
Yes. Child inside.
Well, we should wrap it up then. This Quackcast 594. Thank you very much for being my fellow children on this Quackcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, children.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.